Today, we're going to be looking at a topic that I have covered recently, but this time, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing it from a different perspective. If you follow this channel, you'll notice that recently we had a video that talked about it takes a team to make a successful exit. That was from the specific angle of for the business owner, just introducing the different parts of the team. Well, if you are a wealth manager, you are an important part of that team, but you may not fully understand how that works. For example, my entire practice is focused in the exit planning space. Um, the investment banking firms as well as business brokers that I work with, they function in the M&A world. So the reality is two-thirds of the team that I referenced already is focused in that particular space. If you were a wealth manager, then there's a reality that some of this is going to be very new to you. I mean, you work with many clients across the spectrum, and you have this business owner client who has come to you talking about needing to exit. Well, the reality is just because of who you are and what you do, it's unfair for you to feel like, okay, you need to have every answer for it. So the purpose of this video is to serve as an introduction to how this works. So that way you can really understand how to best build a team, but also understand why it is imperative that you get this team built as quickly as possible and make these necessary introductions. So with that having been said and the groundwork being laid, you might be wondering, well, why is this so important? Well, the reality is, if you're not involved pre exit with assembling this team, there's a good chance that post sale, you are not going to be able to take advantage of all of the of that liquidity event and increase your AUM. And another big thing that you may not also already be aware about is there is this silver tsunami that we've been talking about, and what that is referring to the baby boomer generation that is getting ready to exit. A lot of these people have built businesses, maybe in their garage, but they've really built them and they've become very successful. And now they want to hand it off. And if you are a wealth manager and you have people in this demographic and owners who, also are looking to exit, this video is for you. And it's my hope that this discussion will give you some clarity as far as what team you need to put together. Now, before I begin, while this is designed to be an introductory video, let me encourage you, if you feel like this is going to be something that you're going to be working a lot with, to pursue the designation known as the CEPA, and that is Certified Exit Planning Advisor. This video, I'm just going to be giving you the 30,000-foot view of how everything works. If you want to get thorough training to understand all the components of it and really get an idea about how this process works, then I would strongly, strongly, strongly encourage you to get the CEPA designation. So that way you have a really good understanding of this process. But this is an introductory video, and I really hope to be able to assist you in preparing for your clients. So with that having been said, let's really dive into and let's take a look at this landscape. Now, your clients, while they're building businesses, the reality is you're only managing their assets. And when they exit, that's when your real wealth management is going to begin. Because think about it. Yeah, you might be managing some assets for them, but the reality is their business is that's where a large, large, large chunk of their money is locked up. There is And so when they sell it, there's going to be a huge boost to your AUM. So you may be looking and thinking, well, they're my client, they have moderate assets, but if that's going to be a $50 million sale, that's going to be a huge jump with your assets under management. So this is where you really, really, really need to be thinking ahead, especially if you have business owner clients. And we'll get into a little bit of specifics, but before we jump in, here are 4 exit killing challenges that could greatly impact your client and whatever your AUM is, especially you know they're going to have to liquidate or sell at a fraction of the price. The first thing is the valuation disagreement, and what that is that's when you know they're looking at the value and they're like, this can't be. I mean, I've spent so many years working with this business. I don't understand why I have less than optimal value for this. The next thing is emotional attachment. You know, this is different than selling a house. Selling a house obviously can be a very emotional endeavor, especially if you've lived there for years. If your kids grew up there, and even if you had grandkids come over on top of that. I think of my grandparents when they were living just outside of Baltimore. Their home, in addition to being the home that my dad and his older brother grew up in, that was the home where you know me and my siblings and our cousins, we visited. I remember the last time I actually visited that home, it was after his funeral. So the reality is, there was just so much history and so much emotional attachment to that. The reality is, with a business, it's even more, just because of the fact that you've put blood, sweat, and tears trying to build this up. And now, when it comes time to selling it, just trying to divorce yourself from it, since it's almost become a part of you, it's going to be really hard. Um, Operational baggage. There's a lot of deficiencies and things that have not been optimized that are going to reduce the sale price. I think of one business that years ago, uh, before the owner sold it, it was valued at 40 million. But then a few years later, somebody asked him, because he actually had been kind of forced to exit, and it was revealed that he sold it for 30 million. Well, likely what happened is that 10 million devaluation occurred just because of the fact that the firm that bought it is going to be looking at it and thinking, hey, you need to exit, but the reality is we're going to buy this at a discount. So here's our offer. And then the final one is founder dependency, where, if you've been essentially an owner operator for 35 or 40 years, if you cannot walk away from that business for even a week without things falling apart, you don't have something that's transferable. If you can walk away for 90 days and things are working as well as they were before you left, then you have something that is very valuable. But if you are so valuable to the operation of that business that you cannot go for a week's vacation without people needing you, you got a problem. So, really, having laid that out, that's kind of the groundwork with the challenges, and really, with the sheer number of businesses that are going to be entering the market here for sale. This is going to be something that over the next decade, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for everybody to benefit from. But at the same time, as I outlined with those 4 challenges, there's going to be a lot of potential difficulty. So now that we've laid the groundwork, who are the members of the team? Well, obviously you were one, and we're going to talk in a little bit about the role that you're going to play. The first member of the team that you're going to need is a value accelerator. Now, there are fractional COOs like me or fractional CFOs who can do this role. And what the goal is they're going to be the ones who are going to be really getting into the business, optimizing it, trying to make sure everything is transferable and fully prepared I know the practice that I do, there are a lot of components that I do that you might look and say that's more of what a CFO does. Um, and I'll admit it, I have a bit of a broader skill set in some ways. But what's going to happen here is we're going to be looking, and our goal is going to be get everything completely transferable, very low dependency on the owner, almost to the point that, they don't need to be there, which really is what the ultimate goal is for successful exit planning. And then also making sure that everything is ready for the due diligence process. Because once we go into that, we want to make sure that everything is optimized and everything is set so that we can just move forward as quickly as possible. Now, what are the types of things that might need to be addressed? Well, the seven core areas that I am specifically looking at with what I do are data and analytics, making sure that, we're taking as good of advantage of the information we have, budget development and controls. We got to make sure that this key process is instituted and there are good control mechanisms to prevent everything from, overages with spending to money disappearing that shouldn't be allocated in that way. Strategic planning, the reality is what's going to happen is your client, if we do this right, they're going to receive some really nice payments over the course of the coming years. They're labeled earnouts. Now, obviously, some deals may not have them. A lot of this is basically a payment that's contingent on business performance. And if we do our strategic planning right and just make sure that this business continues to grow, they're going to benefit. And obviously, you will benefit too. Uh, Process policy and procedure development, just making sure everything is fully documented so that way, we know everything that's supposed to happen. Because let's face it, if everything resides in your head or in somebody else's head, that is going to be a red flag that every potential buyer is going to run away from. Operations optimization. I mean, obviously, you've got success. We just want to make sure that we are as efficient as possible operationally. If there are some innovations out there that can really help us, whether they be tech or, it might be just, there's just something simple. Our goal is to make sure that we are as efficient and optimized as possible to ensure that this business is humming as successfully as possible. Multi-channel marketing. I mean, you're getting ready to go on one of the biggest events in this business's history. It's going to be transferring from one business owner to the next. Possibly you, the only business owner that it's ever had, to a new owner. So we want to make sure that we're able to get a good story out to the clients. And really, transparency is always the best. And really, what we want to do is we want to make sure that everybody knows that we are going to be doing the absolute best in terms of quality. Um, Tech analysis and improvement, we need to make sure that everything is modernized for a competitive advantage, but at the same time, it's streamlined. Maybe we need to increase um, a bit the subscription that we have for one of our software packages. Maybe we need to decrease. Maybe we need to eliminate. Maybe we need to say, hey, AI, we can use AI to do some of these tasks and really automate it. Or, maybe we're basically it's a money pit and we should move away from it. There are so many different things, but the key is that is going to be important, as well as making sure things are secure. The last thing we want to do is have a business that is open up to cybersecurity threats. Just because, again, that's a major risk that could be a red flag for a potential buyer. Well, what's the timeline? Well, the first few months, obviously, we're going to be going for quick wins. The big thing is going to be, the infrastructure development and optimization, as well as, likely building out that exit team and even, making sure that we have all the documentation in order. That might sound like a lot, but again, it's just taking one step at a time. And really, ideally, we should be able to get that within about 2 years. maybe a little bit more, depending on just how much of each part of the process we need to do. But, the key is going to be just to keep the pedal to the metal, knowing that, you know, the sooner we get all this work through, the better. And then obviously the sale process, it could take a few months, it could take a few years. It really depends, just because of the fact that, if we're able to get through the competitive bid process and select somebody and, sail through it, okay, that'll be nice and fast. It's possible that things might fall apart. We might need to start back at ground one, at ground zero. Whatever it is, at the end of the day, that is kind of what it looks like. So now that we've put that out there, let's talk about what your role is. This is going to be key, just because of the fact that, there's a good chance that, this is going to be a client that you have worked with for years. And they've said, hey, we're beginning to, think about exiting the business. Now, obviously, they might, if you're new to this, you may not be aware of the fact that you really need to be having these conversations with people closer to 5 to 7 years before they exit, as opposed to 3 to 5 years, which would be in me. And the reason why is because that's when you need to start thinking about it and just assessing, what just really getting a sense of, like, okay, do we know what we're going to do? Do we have an idea about what the next step is? And, once you do that, obviously building out the team, such as like having somebody like me as a value accelerator come in, and then having an investment banker, ideally, possibly a business broker, depending on the size of the business, having them come in. But you need to be having this discussion that when it's time, you know, getting the team together. And at that moment, during the early stages, like say, for example, when I'm working on the optimization, you're not necessarily going to need to be involved as much. Your part of the process is going to begin, you know, like in year two for me with, getting the business optimized. It's going to be the year before we take it to the market, but not necessarily the first year that I would be working. And it's during this time you're going to need to be doing a lot of planning. You're going to need to get your pre-exit tax strategy figured out. Also, you're going to need to get your post-exit investment planning. Just determining, okay, what are we going to do with this money? How are we going to invest it so that way you're going to have a sufficient amount of income that's going to cover your living expenses? How are we going to design your lifestyle? In other words, what are you going to do with your time? I mean, if you've been spending 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week in this business, we need to make sure that, you're able to transition, but at the same time be mentally prepared and really figure out what type of life do we want to build. Um, Risk management. Obviously, we need to make sure that there's insurance and asset protection before this liquidity event. Family legacy planning. What type are we going to put this into a trust? Are we going to build a trust? Are there going to be gifting strategies? I mean, how are we going to handle a generational wealth transfer? I mean, these are the types of things that you are going to need to be working with and working through. And obviously, some things, like, for example, the post exit investment, as well as any tax strategies there, you're probably going to need to modify them once the deal comes into focus, just because of the fact that you're not going to actually know what the deal structure is going to look like before. But at the same time, getting these plans in the works so that way you can then adjust as needed is going to be crucial. But anyway, this is going to be something that, and hey, if you want to get ahead of the game and start this when you bring in the value accelerator for the business, that's great. Just thinking ahead. But again, the reality is these are things that, while you're going to need to be developing these strategies, you don't necessarily need to get to work right away on day one, partly because the business owner is going to be being kept busy by somebody like me. But once we're able to get that process going, then we can, definitely move to the very important part of the process for them, and that is addressing all these issues. Um, Now, obviously, during this process, you might be noticing that you're going to need to be coordinating with me or whoever the value accelerator is. And whoever the M&A advisor is, you're also going to be wanting to have some conversations too. Their role may not really get going right away. They'll be able to give you some valuable input with some of these items, but when they get going with it, obviously there's going to be a lot of information, really kind of like preparatory as far as what we're doing, that's going to really help them out down the road as well. So, really, at the beginning of the day, when it comes to coordination, this is one of the reasons why I like having the three of us, me, the M&A advisor, and you as the wealth manager, to meet right away, is because it gives us a chance day one to get this team developed. We can coordinate, we can have regularly, like monthly check ins, just to kind of see where things stand, and we can really build some good momentum. So um, now that we've kind of laid things out for you, let's talk about the final member, and that is the M&A advisor. Now, they're going to be entering likely in year three. Hopefully, it's going to be, closer to just a few months. Since after all, our goal is to get everything optimized and ready for them so they can basically take it. But where we're looking at is, you know, they're going to have some important roles at the beginning. And one of the big roles is just getting to know the team, like just being introduced to the business owner and just developing that relationship. Because if they're going to be handling the sale of the business, it's very important that, they get a good relationship with that business owner established right away. So, um, understanding the M&A advisor, they're going to be executing on the value that the fractional COOs build. My goal is going to be working internally to build it out. Their goal is to drive up the value externally. And the deal structuring decisions are going to be impacting the strategies. Like I said, a lot of these deals are going to have earnouts, and while there's going to be cash at the beginning, and there are going to be complexities with it, the important thing to keep in mind is you need to know every detail. I remember talking with a wealth manager a while back who said that he found out that if this was not a client of his, and knowing him, I'm not surprised just because he is on the ball. But this client didn't realize that he had earnouts coming. And the reality is, business, not everybody gets earnouts, especially if the business doesn't quite live up to the potential. But he actually wound up getting $1 million earnouts over the course of 3 years, 1 million per year, and he didn't know it was coming. His wealth manager didn't, and the potential was a lot of that money was going to get lost. Thankfully, they figured the wealth manager found out about it, decided, okay, let's figure out some good um, tax efficient strategies. So they were able to shield as much of that wealth as possible by those strategies. So that way, Uncle Sam didn't get a very healthy cut of it. Uncle Sam, at the end of the day, got what was due to them. But at the same time, it's like, okay, as a friend of mine likes to say, pay what you owe, but don't be generous. Now, the M&A advisor, while they need to be introduced at the beginning, the reality is their work is going to be right after I've done a lot of my work, and really once you've gotten a good bit of your work under the way. And the reason why is because they can't fix operational problems. They can't create value that exists. I mean, while I love the approach that some investment bankers take, if the value is just not there's nothing they can do. I mean, this what we do is not magic. It's a matter of there needs to be value present, and if the value has been carefully developed, then they can really amplify it. But if it's not been done, skipping the value acceleration process, you're just going to really kind of leave them in a lurch. And, you know, again, if they come in too early, there's a good chance that operational issues are going to reduce the valuation. So, what are the key responsibilities that an M&A advisor has in this? Well, market positioning. Their goal is to identify the right buyer, and they're also going to work towards optimizing the valuation by, you know, really, really the way that it's presented. They're going to be obviously handling the deal structuring and negotiating terms. They're going to be doing the buyer vetting. They'll be qualifying serious buyers versus those who, they might be just kicking the tire, proverbially speaking. And then transaction management, they're going to be the ones handling the due diligence and closing, likely handling the NDAs. They're going to be handling a lot of it. So that way the business can continue to function and you're not constantly getting dragged in. Now, you're probably taking a look at this and thinking, okay, well, I got the idea. How does this team work together? Well, ideally, it'll be, you know, monthly meetings with calls. Now, we may not need to do that. It may be more like quarterly. We'll bring up things, especially if there's a lot of work that needs to be done and, there aren't updates. But there's a good chance that, monthly there'll be the meetings will be discussing you and as well as the business project. Um, and obviously, uh, clear decision ownership is going to exist because we all have key parts of this process. And what needs to happen is we need to make sure we know who's handling what. Nothing can go unassigned because if it falls through the crack, it can become a major problem really fast. And really, there needs to be unified client communication strategy. And really, that's the beauty of meeting regular, developing the relationship and discussing, talking through things. Just because if everybody stays in the loop and well informed, that way we can make sure that we get everything the direction that it absolutely needs to go. So, this raises a question. How do you position yourself for exit opportunities? Well, again, I'm creating this video for the financial advisor who's new to this. There's a good chance that you may not be really interested in this. And I know I've talked with advisors, and some of them, this is not their thing. And the reason why you might be coming and looking at this video is because you just have this one client who's a business owner. Like, what do I do with them? And you may be looking at this process and be thinking, well, okay, I want to help them out through it because they're my client. But once they're done, I really don't want to get into this. I get it. And everybody needs to have their niche. Some people, they might focus on one area. Others might, decide they really don't want this. But if you've looked at this introductory video and you're interested in how this works and would really like to position yourself as the go-to person, which, honestly, that considering what I said earlier with the silver tsunami, I think that would be a really good thing. What you need to do is the way you position yourself is this. Um, you need to take a look at all the business owner clients that you have today and be thinking who all is going to be exiting in the next 10 years. And that's when you need to start also having proactive exit planning conversations. I said earlier, 5 to 7 years out is when you should really start seriously discussing it. And I mean that. But, anytime you even have a business owner client come on, ask them, have they thought down the road with their business exit? Because the reality is all of us are going to exit from a business one way or the other. And in addition to that, what's also really helpful is emphasizing that, day one, when you start the business, have this at the forefront of your mind. A lot of people don't. I know when I heard that, my initial thought was that seems extreme, but I've come to the conclusion that no, it's not. The reality is if as soon as you're starting the business, you're thinking, okay, when do you want to exit? How do you have your exit in mind? That will help you with a lot of your decision making. So here is some action steps that you can take today. In addition to, that exercise, start identifying the clients who are really within the 5 to 7 years from potential exit to start having serious conversations. If you have people that are in the 3 to 5 year range, that's when you need to say, okay, we've got to we've got to really get cracking here, just because of the fact that the window, just because of how long this process takes. We need to start seriously assembling this team to make it a success. Build the relationships with fractional COOs or CFOs. I love introductory calls with financial advisors. A lot of them, they're interested in this. A lot of them have business owner clients. A lot of them don't actually understand everything that's going on. And that's why I'm always eager to not only talk with them, but also encourage them, hey, if you want to talk with an investment banker, I have one I can introduce you to. But the point here is this: I love to network with them just because they don't know necessarily when they're going to need me. And, if you're new to this world, you may not know that you're sitting on a ticking time bomb and you have somebody who needs help. So, at the end of the day, what's important is you need to build good relationships with value accelerators who are going to be able to help guide your client through the exit process. Now, if this is truly something you want to do, and I actually have talked with firms where they like to do, they just do exit planning as a specialty. Their goal is to really help business owners get things figured out. And maybe they don't necessarily go in depth and as hands on as I do, but their goal is they want to position themselves as a specialist in exit planning. Well, that is a very good approach. I mean, you may not want to do that with your firm, but I know there are firms that have done that, and it's actually been really, really, really helpful and successful for them. The final thing is to coordinate early. Don't wait until an M&I advisor is engaged. Now, I'm going to kind of conclude with this. And this is the reason why I'm doing this video. This is the reason why I like working with financial advisors. This is the reason why the investment banker that I work with, he actually loves them too, just because he actually started his career as a financial advisor. And that is, we want to develop something that will be mutually beneficial for everyone. And the reason why it is so important that we have this conversation with you is there's a statistic out there that says that if you are not involved in making the introductions in the M&A process, 82% of people are going to go somewhere else with that money. In other words, if you had a room of 100 business owners and you were and their financial advisor was not the one making these introductions, 82 people are going to be selecting a different financial advisor to handle it. So, in other words, the importance is this: coordinate early so that way we can make sure that you will be able to substantially increase your AUM. Don't wait until it's too late. Get things coordinated properly so that way you are really a hero to your client. And I know with me and Mike, my investment banking colleague, our goal is to help you to be successful. We want you to increase your AUM. We want to develop a mutually beneficial arrangement, just because of the fact that if we work together and are able to help you in getting the plans set up and everything figured out for your client, they're going to be so grateful for what you've done. And of course, they're going to want you to manage their assets. Think about it. If somebody sells a business for, say, $100 million, yeah, I'm sure that your AUM is going to look great. But it's only going to happen if you're going to be interested and really engaged and just coordinating right away. Don't wait. If you have a client who needs to exit, work quickly to make sure that you get the right introductions right away. Because if somebody else does it, they're probably going to be the ones who are going to be handling those finances. So if you've watched this video, you're interested more, I'd love to talk with you. If you want to position yourself as a specialist with exit planning, I would strongly encourage you to pursue the SEPA designation. I'd also love to talk with you as well. And, you know, even though I, I'd also love to, introduce you to the investment banker and that I work with, Vestacor and Mike Sciortino, because I'd love to, create a team that would help you, obviously grow your AUM, but also more importantly, help your client exit successfully. If we work together, we can be very successful. You see my contact information in the side. If we've gotten to the end of this and you're thinking, yeah, I like what I'm hearing, I really want to work with you and just really help um, my clients and at the end benefit, I definitely would love to talk with you. So thank you again for watching this video, and I really hope to be able to talk with some of you in the future. Thank you again for your time and have a great rest of the day.